and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
It's dark, it's gloomy, the wind is howling. This is Safari Live.
Ready.
Standing by.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our sunrise safari, and welcome to a very gloomy start to the day, hence why we had lights and we're doing a little bit of a horror sort of start. It feels like that kind of morning. Everything is very, very dark. There's a wind howling, and it is quite eerie out here at the moment. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Tristan, and on camera today, we've got Craig the Batman that is with us. So, we're going to try and see if we can find any signs of the royal family. It has been very, very long, and we've had very little sign of them, and we haven't seen them for quite a while. So we're going to go try and see if there's any sign of them. I know my friend Byron is out, and he's looking for lions. So between the two of us, hopefully we will have a successful day, much like yesterday. Yesterday was an amazing day. Taylor had the beautiful caracal, which was very, very cool. I'm still very jealous about it, but she deserved some luck, and it was really cool that we actually got it live. It's so special. Now, all the caracal sightings that I've seen have always been quick and fast, and so we actually, to get it on camera is really quite something. Now, the most important part of our game drive is you, the viewers. So we would love to hear from you. You would love to answer all the questions that you may have yearning inside your body. So please, if you do have questions, send them to #SafariLive on Twitter, and we will try and answer as many as possible and try and get through a lot today. Hopefully it will be a busy morning, and that we will see many, many things as we go along. That the royals will be back, and Karula will be back, and everybody will be sitting pretty in the open. I don't think they're going to be up in a tree now, but maybe on a termite mound or a dam wall, like treehouse dam wall or twin dam wall. That would be quite nice indeed. Now, I mentioned Byron earlier, and that he was on the search for lions. So let's go across so that he can say good morning and see how he's progressing with his lion search.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Byron, and on camera with me this morning is Dave. Good morning, David. Now, we are in search of lions, Tristan. We got those tracks a little bit earlier on during the pre-show drive, and I'm still following these tracks, but it is difficult at night. Well, not at night, or while it's still dark, and I've got to constantly just check on the road to see if there are still tracks, and I do still see them heading in a westerly direction this morning. So it would be wonderful if we heard the lions calling now, because that would make it a lot easier to give us an idea of how far they've moved. We know that lions can cover huge distances in the evenings, and they are patrolling their territory and possibly hunting. So it's not always easy to find them. But and I'm trying to see the hyena tracks along the road too. But there's definitely lion tracks here. I'm just trying to see if I can see how many there are. For the moment, it just looks like a single track, so just one line. But we'll see. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that yesterday, Tristan had the Birmingham males, and I think James saw them in the afternoon. So I wonder if this is perhaps not the other brother that's maybe heading in that direction where they are. Michael, you asked if we could go past the hyena den. We will indeed. I think it's still a little bit early for now, and I think while we've got these tracks, we're going to see. Oh, there's a little scrub hare. Look at that, little one, little baby scrub hare. Now the young The young hares are known as leverets. That is what a young hare is known as. A leveret. That's very cute. I wonder if there isn't perhaps an adult around here somewhere. But this grass is so long at the moment, very difficult to see them. And that young scrub hare will probably find or seek some refuge in a thicket somewhere and hide there for the day. It's very cute. Cindy, very interesting question and a good question. You want to know how much does the spotlight affect these animals and in terms of their vision. And give me a second, Cindy. I just want to double check if I can see any line tracks going this way. Dear, this is going to be tricky. So Cindy, it definitely does affect the eyes of the animals, of predator and prey both. And the thing is, sorry, I just got an update that Diane saw the lions on the dam cam last night. Okay, so these would definitely be the tracks from those lions because I've been following them from quarantine. So these are the lions that I think you would have seen on the dam cam, Diane. Cindy, getting back to your question, sorry, just about the spotlight. It definitely does affect the animals, and we do need to be sensitive. So nocturnal animals adjust a lot quicker to a spotlight. It doesn't affect them as much, but we still try not to shine the spotlight directly on their eyes for a long period of time. Once we've spotted them, because what happens is you pick up the... hang on, what is that? Just an impala lying down. I'm getting excited because I'm looking for lions. As I was saying, once we've spotted the animals, you pick up the reflection of their eyes. We then take the spotlight off and try and view them, but we'll shine just off the animals, so we're not directly shining on them. But diurnal animals like impala, a lot of the herbivores that are mainly active during their day, their eyesight is very sensitive, and it does take them a long time to readjust if you shine the spotlight on them for too long. So we are very sensitive and we are careful. Dear, I don't see any more tracks along here. So Cindy, yes, it does affect both predator and prey in a slightly different manner. It's mainly, I would say, nocturnal and diurnal animals. There's some more scrub here. But we are sensitive, and we do try our best not to shine on them for long periods of time, or shine the spotlight just off of them. Alright, I'm just going to see if I can find out where these lion tracks have gone. While I do that, let's head back to Tristan, get an update and see what he's up to.
Well, Byron, I hope that you managed to find that lion. I actually heard it calling at about 12 o'clock last night, so I'm hoping that you will be able to find it and that it is somewhere here. Now, it's just starting to rain as well, which is just adding to the sort of gloominess and eeriness of the morning. Hopefully the rain doesn't come down too much because I don't have my roof on, which means that Rebecca will shout at me. So those of you who don't know Rebecca is one of our ladies in FC, and she always reminds me that if it looks like it's going to rain, you should have your roof. But being boys, we generally just do our own thing, and we normally get caught short, and Rebecca is right, and then I have to explain why I didn't do it, and it's quite funny. It's a whole process that goes on. But hopefully the rain's not going to come too much. It seems like it's just a light little sort of spit of rain every now and then. So if you do see a hand coming across the lens and wiping the lens, that is the reason, is we don't want water on the lens. So if Craig does wipe it, that is why. Now, I've decided that nobody knows where Karula is. We've asked around, nobody can give us an update as to where she's been for the last sort of week. So I'm going to check every single boundary road that we have on Djuma. So I'm going to go all the way along on our western boundary, which is what I'm currently doing now, and I'm checking for any sign of Karula maybe coming from Arathusa side. Then I'm going to go all the way along the southern boundary and then up the eastern boundary and hope that somewhere along the line I will pick up a track for her in this area. The problem is that it is still very, very dark and very difficult to actually see tracks. It's not an easy thing at all, and it's getting into that light now where it's kind of half light is what we call it. It's not dark, but it's also not light enough to see what's going on. And with tracks and tracking, you need a bit of light so that you're throwing a shadow on the edge of the track, because otherwise, if you just shine a light on the surface of a road, that light, if it's directly on it, you're going to see nothing. There's going to be no contrast, there's going to be no shape to anything, and it really is tough. And the same then applies to the darkness. Obviously, you then can't see. Our eyes are not that good, so we're not able to see in the pitch black. So hopefully, even though it's quite cloudy, the light will come up quickly. Aaron, you're wondering if it's possible to tell how old an animal's tracks are at night. Well, like this morning, if we're out, we know that there are certain animals that are really nocturnal in their activity. So things like porcupine, genets, civets, they'll typically only walk around really at night. They're not going to spend too much time walking around during the day. So you use their tracks in conjunction with anything else that you may find. So let's say we have lion tracks like Byron has got, and we see a genet track and the lion tracks are on top. We know that that is then later in the night, and that is not something that it walked early in the night, because otherwise if it was early in the night, then theoretically the genet should be on top. Then you'll use all kinds of other things. So we can use doves. Doves will be out now. Franklins will be starting to come out as this light comes up. And so if their tracks are on top, then you know it was before the sunrise. If their tracks are not on top and they've been walked over, then you know that you're right behind that animal. And then on a morning like this, you're going to have wind disruption too. So because it's blowing a little bit, the edges of a lot of tracks will be blown, and you'll start to get little particles of soil that will be in the foot areas where it's stood. It's compressed the soil, and with the wind then particles blow on top of that compressed area. So if you see little particles of soil that are loose on top, then you know that that was from the wind, and then that track is not that fresh. If you can see that it's completely compressed, there's no particles, then you know that that is quite fresh. So there's a number of ways that we utilize it. Also, we drive a lot of roads in the early afternoon. Sorry, I've got a bug crawling on my leg. Off you get, shield bug. And we drive a lot of the roads in the afternoon and sunset safari, and so while we do that, we know that we've driven somewhere, and then you come along during the night and you see a track walking where you've just driven, and then you know that that's a track that's been created during the night and how fresh it will be. So there's lots of different ways that we use to be able to work out where the tracks are, how old they are, even though it's in the night and now where it's very, very dark and gloomy. Ellen, well, let's start with a happy birthday. I hope you have a wonderful day today, and that we do spoil you with Karula. You're saying that every year Karula has turned up for your birthday. Well, Ellen, you must be a good luck charm, so we are going to hopefully find Karula for you and not spoil the run and celebrate your birthday in style. So I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy, and you get spoiled by everybody else, not only Karula and us here at Wild Earth. But so far it's been quite quiet this morning. I'm quite surprised. All the open areas that we find a lot of impalas on, very little this morning. I think it's a bit windy and cold in those open clearings, and so they're all tucked up into the bushes here, trying to sort of get out of this wind and try and stay a little bit warm. So not very, very easy, I don't think. I think it's going to be quite a chilly start to the day. Now, we are still looking and searching for Ellen and for us and for Karula, and so I think what we're going to do is go across to Byron and see if he's had a little bit more luck with his lion tracks.
Unfortunately, no luck just yet, Tristan. We're having a look. This lion cut off, it looks like it was just a male, but it's a bit difficult to see really where I got to now. But they've cut off through the block somewhere, so I'm actually going to head towards Arathusa and have a look that side, because I do think that he's potentially heading in the direction of his brothers. So let's see, we'll go and check in that general direction and have a look. But I mean, it could be anywhere. It could have also just decided to cross south. I'm hoping that with us driving around now, we might still get him walking either on the road or lying down in the road. It's still nice and early, it's still very, very cool, so that's when a lot of these predators are still very active. Peter, lions will usually hunt under the cover of darkness. That's when they prefer hunting. It's a little bit easier for them to hunt when they're able to hide better and, at night. However, the bush is so thick at the moment that they could easily hide in this long grass. Lions are also very opportunistic, so they will try and hunt any time of the day if the opportunity arises. So there's no specific time. Generally, they prefer hunting at night, but lions will definitely hunt during the day too. And one thing I've learned, Peter, is that out in the bush, there's never ever a set rule. Never. The animals will always change their behavior depending on the area, depending on the time of year. You can read all these books on animal behavior and think you know everything, but animals will always change their behavior in some way. Okay, let's try and have a good look around here quickly. Any sign of a lion track? I think Tristan might be heading down in this area too, in this direction. I see hippo tracks along the road here, so possibly a hippo from one of the nearby dams that's gone off and fed during the course of the evening, and they then return to the water later on. But no lion tracks yet. You know what, I think if Tristan is heading down into this area, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head back in the opposite direction. So I'm going to head back east and let Tristan check this area. Perhaps these lions turned and headed in the opposite direction. So let's go, let's have a look. That's the nice thing about working together as a team, and when you are tracking, try and check different areas and narrow it down a little bit, narrow the search down to hopefully find out where these lions have gone. And speaking of Tristan, he's found something large he'd like to show you.
We have indeed. We found a beautiful herd of Ellies that are busy moving down the road. You can see this is a female and their calf, and they're walking straight towards us at the moment. But you notice that their ears are out quite a bit, so you can see that they're very, very close here. I'm going to try and just duck down. Sorry, Craig. And this is a female, and her calf are just strolling along. There is more of them that are going to start coming out, but you notice that their ears were cocked out quite a bit, and that's because of the wind. Now, elephant is not a happy animal when the wind like this. They don't really like it very much at all. They prefer to be in thicker, denser areas out of the wind, and the reason why is that the wind disturbs their hearing massively, so they can't pick up what's going on around them, which makes them a little bit more uneasy. And so when they're walking in roads and there's something in front of them, you find that they tend to have their ears out a lot more in conditions like this than if it was a still, quiet, non-blustery morning. And you can see the little one is there, and look at how it's watching mom. It's basically learning how to feed off these plants by watching the mother. So it sees how the trunk moves, and then it in turn mimics what its mom is doing to be able to learn. Now that little one is already quite big. I would say that's probably about a 4-year-old elephant, and so it's probably got the trunk down pat, but still it knows that it's going to learn from mom about certain plants that it can and can't eat. And it's just amazing to watch how they do mimic the adults. Now, I wonder if it's going to come out and say hello to us. it's trying to squeeze itself through a bush. Look, it's having a bit of trouble. It's very, very funny. A little one. So you can see the tusks are just starting to show. Now that's always a good one to use for being able to age an elephant. I find that when I was in Kenya, most of the elephants that we had that were around 3.5 to 4 years old is when the little tusks would start to show. You'd start to see them growing a little bit earlier than that in the high up, just below the eyes, and then as they sort of started protruding from the actual skin, that was at around 4 years old. So it's a good way to measure them. And this female that's here, she looks very, very small. So I would imagine that this is her first calf, and that's why also she'll be a little bit more protective. When mothers are first-time mothers, they tend to be a little bit more authoritative over their little ones. Now I'm sure that these guys are going to move into as dense a bush as possible. You can see they're starting to go towards thickets, and they're going to go down into drainage areas where they can get out of this horrible weather that we're having this morning. It's very, very cold. The wind is cold. There's this rain in the air. So that's where I'm sure that they are heading. And they would have been out feeding during the night, and now are making their way towards the thickets. And it's really quite amazing because we're sitting here and there's actually elephants on both sides of us, and it's such a nice way to start the morning, just having this feeding around you. It's all very, very, very gentle, and it's a sort of nice way to ease us into the morning. It's not too chaotic like the cats can be sometimes, so really, really nice. There's one here that's having a really good feed. It's gotten in amongst the black monkey orange, which is that small little plant that you see growing at the bottom there. It looks very sort of spindly and small as a tree, so he's in amongst those, but he won't be eating that. He's going to be eating the grass, this little male, sorry, a female should I say, it's not a male. So she's going to be feeding off the grass more than anything. Megan from Louisiana, you're wondering if that little baby had come any closer, would the mother have charged us? Well, Megan, not necessarily. The elephants in this particular area of the Kruger National Park have had very little pressure from people in terms of hunting or poaching or anything like that. And so they've started to learn that the vehicles are not really a massive threat. And when the little baby comes and investigates, as long as we don't touch the baby and the baby doesn't scream or sort of get nervous and run, then the mother's generally quite fine with it. If she's approached from quite a far distance like that female did, she's then happy with our presence because she's gone relaxed and she's fed around us. So if the little one wants to come and just have a little look, then she's okay with that and doesn't worry too much at all. But yes, if we had hurt that little baby, if the baby had come close and I'd maybe driven towards it, Mom would definitely come to the aid of her baby. Elephants are very protective mothers, so you've got to be quite careful around little ones and make sure that you don't do anything silly and get too close or do any harm to the baby. Maggie, that little calf's tusks are not broken. That's just how they start. So they start up just below the eyes. You can actually see on this elephant, if you look very, very close, you'll see that the tusk, where it comes out of the lip line there, if you look up and above the lip line, you'll see that there's actually, the tusk goes all the way up to just below the eye. So that's where it starts. The roots of it are just below the eyes in the jawbone, and then it comes down and then eventually starts to grow out through the lip. And once you see it coming out underneath the lip there, then that is how it starts, and eventually it will then grow into the tusk that you see on this female here. You must remember that a tusk is a modified tooth. That is all it is. So it's an incisor that has come out a little bit more than the other teeth and has formed these tusks. So it's much like us. Our teeth will come out eventually and start from the jawbone and then out into the mouth. But isn't that quite spectacular? It's such a beautiful shot, that. Well done, Craig. So Angela in Missouri wondering about milk tusks and permanent tusks, and is there a difference? Well, when it comes to elephants, they do not have milk tusks. I've never seen an elephant get tusks and then lose them. It doesn't happen. Elephants just have their adult teeth, if you can call it that, when it comes to tusks, and even in their lifespan they'll have just adult teeth. Now, what they have is a series of 6 sets of teeth, and as they grow, so that tooth gets bigger and bigger. And as the tooth then wears down, so it then gets pushed forward almost like a railway line, and they come from the back and they then push the old ones out, they fall out and the next set comes in. And once that 6th set has come through, then that's the end of it. But they do not have milk teeth or baby teeth like what we do as humans or as canines. So they're a little bit different. Once it starts to grow, it's the same tusk that will grow throughout their life. They won't lose it and then get a new one. Isn't this amazing? What a start to our morning. We really have been so spoiled with elephants recently. We've had so many beautiful herds around in the last sort of month. And I think I have an idea, James was mentioning it a bit the other day as well, and the two of us were talking about it, and I'm sure the reason why we've been seeing so many elephants is because of how little pressure there is from any other big herbivores at the moment. So we don't see the massive herds of buffalo. Normally we would get herds that will roll through here, and we'll get sort of herds of 100, 200 buffalo that would come in, and they would be trampling grass and feeding off the grass quite extensively. But this year we haven't had that. After the drought, the buffalo numbers took a bit of a hit, and also the rains occurred in other areas before they did here, so a lot of the buffalo moved into those sections, and that means that this area has got really a lot of grass to offer. And so for elephants, it's the perfect place to come and feed, and I think that's why we're seeing so many at the moment. It also a part of it is that we've had the marula season, so during February and into March there was lots of marulas around, and that tends to attract a lot of elephants into the area. So I think it's also a bit of that too. But it really has been spectacular to see the number of elephants that we have seen, and very, very relaxed and very, very happy with the area. So it's been very, very cool. We've had some amazing interactions and amazing sightings of them swimming and dust bathing and carrying on. You can see in the distance there's some of them still moving through, so it's quite a big herd, and they're very spread out at the moment, which is a situation that you see when they feed. When elephants are moving and they want to get somewhere, then you'll find they'll all come together and be very sort of linear in their movement. Everybody will be behind one another, and they'll shift through the bush quite quickly. When they're feeding like this, it's almost like a bombshell effect. Everybody goes into their own direction to be able to find the food that they're looking for, and then they carry on. And once they then decide to move somewhere, there will be some sort of vocalizing, and they'll then come together and they'll move off together. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reverse a little bit back, just so we can keep with these elephants as they move along with us. So let me just move back slightly. Donald, you're wondering if an elephant can get a cavity in its tusk. Well, I would imagine so. I've seen some elephants, and particularly the big bulls, when they break a tusk, I suppose the cavity is then formed, but if they break a tusk, then they get these massive holes that go infected and all kinds of ugly things. And I've also seen other elephants that have got complete tusks, but they do get an infection in that tusk and lip area, so I would imagine that they can get them. And the thing is with elephants, and it's not like people that we eat terrible things for our teeth, so we eat all these sort of sugars and acids, and that breaks down our teeth really quite quickly. These guys are on a more natural diet, and so they don't get mass amounts of cavities like we do, but it is possible. It's essentially the exact same structure as our tooth, so if they feed off the wrong things, or if there's any sort of damage to the tooth, a cavity can form and an infection can set in, should I say, not sit in. It would be very interesting if an infection sat. But you can see now this elephant's just mixing up its diet. So it was feeding off grass, now it's got a branch in the mouth, and look at how it's just turning the branch. I love when elephants feed off branches like that. They put it in, and they start on one side, and then they slowly rotate it through their mouth, and eventually you end up with a situation where the bark is completely stripped. Now I just want to reverse, because we've got a really beautiful big male that is busy scenting a female. So if I go back a little bit, I'm just going to try and see, hopefully they're going to cross in front of us, but she's just off to my left hand side. Let's see if we can just open a gap for them to come across. I don't want to be in their way. But there you go, you can see her there. And then the male, and look at the size difference. So you've got a young one, which is probably still around that same sort of age. It's not the same elephant, but I would say 5 years old, somewhere there, an adult female. And then look at the male in the back. Look at how much larger he is, just particularly his head. Notice his head, much larger. So a really nice size comparison between female and male there. And that's not a very old male. He's not a old boy. He's probably, I would say, in his early 30s, but he is magnificent. And you see how he's scenting this female. He's right up behind her, so I'm sure she's coming into estrus. He's smelling and sniffing around where she urinates, trying to pick up any sign of that estrogen that will be produced when she's in heat. Zoe, the elephant will have its first calf. Normally it's around 12 years old, so it starts mating at 12, it then falls pregnant, and generally by about 14 it's giving birth. It depends on the elephant and the density of males, but an elephant is pregnant for 22 months, so they start reproducing at 12 and normally give birth by about 14 years, and then they will pretty much produce every 4 to 5 years going from there, which is an amazing figure. It really is quite a large amount of calves to be pushing out. And the thing about elephants is that there's very little predation, so generally they're quite successful with that. If it wasn't for people, elephants' numbers would multiply quite quickly because they don't have too many natural predators. Now look at the little young male that's coming up the road. So you can see how his ears are cocked. He's watching us, just checking, making sure we're not anything to worry about. When he's out in the open, they'll feel a little bit more vulnerable, and then they cross into the bush, they feel a lot better. So I do apologize, there might be a little bit of a disruption on the camera, but we do need to put our rain covers on. The rain is really starting to come down a little bit too much. You can see it on the screen, so please, I do apologize about the covers going on. It's just necessary because the cameras are very sensitive pieces of equipment, so we need to just cover that up quickly. Thank you, Craig, well done, good job. There we go, so that's all good. Now, it's interesting how this weather has just blown in all of a sudden. It was very pleasant to start, and now this rain has just started to come in. Right, we're going to stay with these Ellies and see what this male gets up to, and while we do that, let's go across to Byron and see how his lion search is panning out.
We also just getting prepared for the rain. It started to drizzle, and it looks like it's moving in. It's amazing how the mornings can change so quickly. When we got out, it didn't look too bad, but it's definitely changing now. We're going to start making our way back to get our rain covers. Unfortunately, those tracks of that male lion that I had, they did cut back east along our southern cut line, our Gowrie cut line, and it appears as if though it crossed south. We actually scent marked. He walked up to a bush, and you can see how he had scraped, and then carried on along the road and looked like he crossed south. But you never know. Often what happens is these animals will walk a little bit, and then they head off the road and they investigate. Perhaps he smelled something and they come back on again. So I've been having a look, but no more sign of that male lion. But as I was saying earlier, they can cover huge distances, and they can walk around quite a lot during the course of the evening, but they might still pop out a little bit later. It's still very, very cool. We hasn't quite got that light just yet. Still waiting for the sun to rise. Maybe the sun burns off some of these clouds. Not sure what's going to happen with the weather. But while I head back to see if we need to get a roof, let's head to James Henry, who's out on the bushwalk.
Well, we're not going to be out here for long, everybody. Good morning, how are you? Lovely to have you with us. We're going to be going back to the tent very shortly because this is now turned into a squall. My name is James Henry. In case you're wondering, I don't have a stomach problem. No, this is so that VM, who's on camera today, might clean his lens. There we are, VM. Well done. Excellent. Good. So that will remain, sitting on my stick for the duration of this walk, which will be about 5 minutes. As you can see around us, A thick Scotch mist has descended on the Lowveld, the autumnal Lowveld here, and, well, while I was sort of looking forward to going out and seeing an ominous sky and then making my way back eventually for a hot cup of coffee, we're going to start making our way to the tent immediately because this rain is getting quite bad. So come along. Todlo or Toglo? Tog or Todlo? Todlo. Hello, Todlo. Good morning to you. And Todlo, of course, got hold of us using the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Todlo, you want to know what animals get up the earliest? Well, some animals don't really go to bed. The monotonous lark, for example, has been wassailing through the night and just continues into the morning, so they don't go to bed really. Then you sort of get a continuum. Let's pretend that, let's exclude the nocturnal animals, so we'll exclude the lions and the leopards and the hyenas and genets, etc., and just go with the ones that get up early. Well, the animals that get up first, of course, are the grey-headed sparrow and then the crested francolin. Those are the two birds that get up earliest. And then in terms of the mammals, you'll find that all of them, from the impala to the wild dogs to the cheetah, I guess, to any grazing or browsing animal, by the time very first light arrives, they start to move and feed. And that's slightly less so in the winter, but in summer they'll start to get up and feed almost immediately that they can see, because that's the best time of the day. There's moisture on the grass, there's moisture in the vegetation. There is also a whole lot of, there's what was I going to say? Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there. Right, what was here? Moisture on the grass. Good time to eat. Oh, they can escape the worst of the heat in the day. So that's very important, especially for animals out here, which are, they're in a constant state of having to look after the amount of water that they can get and the heat that they have to escape. So normally everybody gets up pretty much as it gets light. There was one exception on the plains and savannas of Africa, of course, and that exception was the human being. We get up later than everyone else because, of course, we're adapted to dealing with heat and scavenging in the middle of the day. So that's quite an interesting story. All right, let's head across to Byron. We're not too far from the tent now. We'll just give you a quick look at it if you'd like to see it. There's Herbie. He's just going to protect us from the tent. Hello, Herbert. VM is very excited. You love the tent, don't you, VM? I'm thrilled. He's so thrilled. Okay, so we're going to go into the tent, and while we set that up, let's head back across to Byron and find out how his trip home is going.
James, my trip home is going okay. We haven't seen anything else just yet, but this drizzle seems to be coming and going, but we definitely do need a roof. And I think it is wise that you head to the tent and set up there. As I said, none of us prepared for this. It didn't look like it was going to rain this morning, and all of a sudden the clouds came over. You can hear all the monotonous larks calling again this morning. They actually don't stop. They really don't stop. It's amazing. Some hyena tracks along the road. Ashley, now you asked, are there any species that are sensitive to the weather and inclement weather? Well, actually not really. Animals tend to, when it changes, if the weather changes and starts raining or starts getting cold, the animals will look for a bit of shelter, and they may go and head under thickets and try to get out of the rain, especially in the cold. But here in Africa, the animals adapt very quickly to the change in climate and the change in season. So it doesn't really affect them. I suppose the only animals that would change their behavior are the reptiles. So snakes will hibernate in the winter. You also see a change in crocodiles. They don't necessarily hibernate, but they will indeed spend a lot more time basking on the banks of the riverbeds or the water holes to warm up and help regulate the body temperature. But in terms of the other animals, their behavior doesn't change too much. You find that a lot of the predators might move around a lot more during the day in the winter because it's much cooler. So in the mornings, for example, when they are walking around, they'll probably still move around till 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning because it is still a lot cooler. Whereas in the summer, as soon as it starts getting hot, they tend to rest a lot earlier and conserve their energy and move around at night. Now, Tristan, I'm not sure if he's back out with the roof, but he has found some more elephant to show you.
We have the same herd. We've just managed to reposition ourselves, and you can see that they're walking all over in the nice open clearing now, which is good. So they've come onto the other side of that thicket that we were watching them disappearing into, and it's interesting to feel how much less wind there is here. Being on that big open road, it was almost like the wind was being funneled through that road, and it was very, very unpleasant. Whereas where we are now, it's very, very calm, and it's not too much wind, and it's all a lot better. You can even see the grass. You can see the grass is not moving nearly as much as it was on that big main road. So that's why I think the Ellies have gone a little bit more relaxed, which is quite nice. Toddler, you're wondering if their temperature affects the elephant behavior. Well, not so much the temperature as the wind. So wind is the big problem. Elephants rely on hearing and sense of smell, and the wind affects that quite heavily. And so you'll find if it's very, very windy, then the elephants will try and find a dense, thick bush to try and spend their days in. As soon as the wind then starts to calm down, you'll find a situation where they then start coming out into the open clearings. So it just depends on wind more than anything else. The cold weather doesn't bug them. In fact, elephants are quite fond of cold weather because being big, large animals, when it's very, very hot, they get a lot of dehydration taking place. They have to utilize those ears to cool the body rapidly. So it's not as easy for them to move around. They tend to spend large portions of the day under treed areas trying to hide away from the sun, whereas in conditions like this, if the wind drops, they can move all day long and be right out in the open and feed off the grasses that are in the open, no problem. So they do not mind a overcast, cooler day, but it's when it's very, very, very hot that they have a problem, and if it's very, very windy that they have an issue. But look at that one, there's a senna bush that is being completely attacked by these elephants, and you can see the senna has got lots of flowers on at the moment, so I'm sure that's also part of the reason that they're going after it, is that those flowers are quite tasty, lots of nectar inside there. We've seen lots of butterflies and insects going towards those plants as well. So Bobby, the thorns don't actually bother the Ellies too much. The thing about an elephant is that it's got very, 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 very thick skin on its feet, very tough from walking around the African bush, and their trunks as well. The more that they utilize their trunks, the sort of harder they get. It's like if you go barefoot and you walk around barefoot, you end up in a situation where your feet start to get sort of tougher and more used to what you're walking around in, and that's the same thing. So when they walk around these hard sort of calloused bottoms to their feet, the thorns don't penetrate there and cause any issues. And with the trunks, little Franklin protesting there, the trunks themselves, the skin is quite thick on them, and so any thorn may try and puncture that area, but it doesn't really get in, and so thorns don't bother them too much. Also, elephants are very, very, very intelligent animals, and they work out things quite quickly. So I've watched elephants feeding off acacias. Now, for those of you who are not aware of what an acacia is, we've got an acacia just to my left here, Craig, that we can maybe show everybody. So this is a beautiful tree that we've got, and an example of it. You see those big white thorns? Now, you would think that that tree is not in any danger of being fed upon by an elephant, but I've watched them feed off those trees where they use their trunk, and they basically run their trunk down the length of the branch. So you'll have the branch section, and they then take their trunk around and they pull it like this, and all those thorns then fold down. They then break the branch off, and they feed it the opposite way. So if all the thorns are facing this way, they'll then put it in their mouth and pull it across like this, and they then get all those leaves off and crunch it down with the teeth, and those thorns then don't poke them in the mouth. It's quite incredible to watch them and to see how they're able to do that. So they really are very, very intelligent, and they find ways to get around thorns really, really easily. But you can see they're still just moving a little bit. And it's going to be a slow feeding process. They will still try and find water today, even though it's overcast and it has been a bit rainy this morning. That's not enough for them to sustain their body. They need to keep hydrated, and so you'll find a situation where they're going to go and try and drink somewhere this morning. I would imagine maybe Red Dam. We're not too far from Red Dam, so go and get some vital water that keeps them alive. Now, it's interesting, they've just knocked over a dead stump for some reason. Lara, the bulls can be, they don't mean to be aggressive to the females, but if they come into a situation where there's a female and estrus and there's more than one bull that picks up on that and arrives, then the bulls can sometimes go into this sort of period of where they fight with one another and they chase each other around. And if a female gets in the way, then the males can be a little bit aggressive to them, but generally no. The males know what's good for them, so they rather be on their best behavior around the females and as showy as possible, so they don't try and chase the females or try and hurt them because they want to mate with them. So they tend to be very well behaved around the girls. You can see this male is being very polite. You can see his ear just sticking out of the bush there. So he's sitting and just feeding along, and every now and then he'll scent that female and try and sort of just gently urge her to mate with him. So generally they are very, very relaxed with the females. I've never seen too many major aggression incidents from males with females. Shell, you're wondering if a bull elephant will kill the calf to bring a female back into heat. No. So this is interesting because generally you'll find that situation happens with territorial animals. So things like lion, leopard, zebras, hippos, they have a territory and they set up a territory. Now generally with a male, a territory and his sort of tenure over that territory is going to be relatively short in comparison to his lifespan, and so the time that they have to breed is very short, and that means that they've got to kill the cubs and bring that female back into estrus so that they can spread their genes. Now with elephants, that's not the case. Elephants don't have territories. They have home ranges and they'll compete for mating every now and then, but because there's enough elephants around and there's no territorial boundaries, the males just roam around, and when they come across a female in estrus, then they try and mate with her, and if they're not the biggest male, then they carry on and move until they do find a female that they can mate with less competition. So that's how they work. They don't have a defined territory that they occupy, and so it's much, much easier for them to be able to sort of come across females without having to kill the young. Lauren, so you're wondering if the female dies, will another mother take care of the calf? Interestingly enough, no. So not with elephants. It's when I was in Kenya and there was those orphaned elephants, it was a case of that's why they had to be taken in by people to be raised and put back into the wild. It's because the older elephants and the females don't suckle those young ones, so they might let that little baby walk with them, but they're not going to suckle them and they're not going to protect them as well as what their mother would. So it's quite difficult for that young one to survive. If it's at about 4 years old and it's no longer suckling, then yes, it probably can survive and probably can be a part of the group and the herd, but it's going to be very, very difficult if it's still suckling. It probably in all likelihood won't survive because the elephants won't be able to suckle it and they won't look after it. It's very, very interesting. Even though they're such a tight bond unit and they really are very, very intelligent, they don't look after each other's young if the other one passes away, which is quite interesting. Now, these Ellies are all over. They're approaching towards where somebody's car is, and so he may have heard a little knocking sound. He was just trying to stop them from walking straight into his car, which is what you've got to do. It's just a different sound than what they're used to. If you just make a sort of slightly different sort of tapping sound, then they take sort of cognizance of that fact and they then move around them and won't walk into the vehicle. But it just shows you how relaxed this group is, and I'm quite surprised because generally with females, when there is a presence of a very large male, they tend to be a little bit more sort of panicky and a little bit more sort of, I don't know, testy is the word. They don't like this presence of the male hounding them all the time, and they then tend to be a little bit more grumpy. So it's nice to see that they're actually quite relaxed and that this big boy is behaving himself as well. It's all very, very nice. But there's a really nice size comparison again for those of you who do the screenshots. You can see now the difference between the females and the male and the little baby on the left. So there's a nice sort of size comparison between them. Right, so we're still going to enjoy this herd and spend some time, and it's so nice to be a part of them. But we do have one other member who is joining us this morning and is part of the team this morning. So Mr. James Henry is safely tucked away in his warm tent out of the rain and the wind, and he would like to say good morning.
That's VM's new studio opening. Here we are, everyone. Sorry, my shadow, I keep forgetting, in the tent. And the few things that we're going to do today are probably going to consist of searching around for small things in and amongst the grass around here. Now, this is because we are about to produce the Safari Live story about grass. Fantastic. Good. So the first thing we'll have a look at is Panicum maximum. The Guinea grass. Very beautiful. Lovely flowers. And what we're trying to find is some sort of thing living inside the grass. So what we've got here, under the microscope, is a little spider. Hang on, don't cue it yet. Whoa. Very skilled to do this stuff, and I'm inescapably not. Well, there you can see whatever it is. Now, I don't know if it's a spider. It must be a spider, but whether the spider is currently in residence or not, I'm not sure. So what we'll do is pop that under the microscope now. Now, wait, Megan, wait. Megan, by the way, is the director today, and she has given me far more credit than I'm due in terms of how skilled I am at the microscope. Okay, I think we're just about there. 1 second. Just going to get it slightly closer. It's quite pushy. There we go. So I'll just change the focus in and out, go to the back of that little web and to the front, and see if we can't see the spider. And there doesn't seem to be any spider there. But look how the seed, which is tiny, that seed that we're looking at there, which is in the sort of mid-right-hand side of your screen, that seed has been eaten by some sort of insect, probably a weevil, perhaps, that's come up, climbed the grass, eaten the seed out, and possibly been then devoured by the spider itself and gone away. But I don't think the spider is there anymore, and in fact, if I move this up very slightly, I think that dark bit there, I wonder if that's not a piece of exoskeleton left in the web by the resident spider of this web. So I need to try and find a living spider for our little Safari Live story, because we had a wonderful example of a spider the other day that unfortunately a drive corrupted. So we're going to try and do the same thing again during our little tent segment. Now, we are completely live, obviously, as live as the two vehicles are. Ah, yes, and that means hashtag Safari Live is still the best way to get hold of us. You can ask us any questions you like. If you want to see something in the tent, then let me know, and I will try my very best to show you what it is that you want to see. Good. Let's go outside. Let's go outside and see what we can find out here. We did set up in a bit of a rush, so I just need to clean one or two things, and then we'll start to investigate the different grass species that we have here and see if we can't find something on them. And as has been the case during the course of the summer, the more time you spend at this level, the more fascinating the world becomes. So while we search for various bits and pieces up here, I think Byron has put his roof on, so let's go and find out if he is feeling sheltered and calm, or if he is still getting blown in the face by mist.
I'm sheltered, calm, and scented, James. Thank you. We've got our roof on. I've just come back towards Djuma Dam, just having a look around to see if there's any sign of these lionesses. Now, we had an update that from the dam cam last night there were a few lions around, and I only had tracks of the one male, so I'm not sure where the others have gone. Haven't seen any tracks of them just yet. Lovely to see the dam so full. Last time I was here, oh, I beg your pardon, there was only the one male that was seen on the dam cam last night, and those are the tracks that we followed this morning that crossed south. So, okay. So it was just the one male. Sorry, I thought there was one or two females with him. But that's okay. We'll see what else we can find. But as I was saying, lovely to see the dam so full after all the rain that we've had. Yeah, this male lion walked all along here last night to Djuma Dam. I can see his tracks coming along the road. Okay, so he must have come from the north, from Buffelshoek area, and then walked straight through Djuma during the course of the night. Marking territory, as I said, I did see a spot where he went and scent marked against the bush. And with these coalitions, what happens is, while they're moving around, even though they split up, they're still patrolling different parts of their territory, and they will still scent mark and also call. So it was possibly the male that we heard last night. And one of the reasons why he was calling, well, two reasons probably. One is to alert other lions that he is in the area, that this is his territory. And the other reason is to potentially find his brothers, find the other coalition, more members of the coalition, the other brothers, see where they are, meet up with them again, and potentially patrol their territory further. We know that sometimes we might see one of the dominant males, or two of them together, occasionally three, or all four together. So it does change and does vary, especially if there are females around. Those males split up and try and meet up with prides and mate with different females. We'll see, wouldn't it be nice if a leopard popped out this morning? Not too much force, surely. Just to the road so that we can follow it for a while, that would be great. Just trying to listen. I think the others are having a few signal problems. James is still in the tent though. I wonder if James has gone off to make coffee, or I think Tristan's got signal issues. Perhaps James has found signal grass. I know he was looking for grass, so maybe he's found signal grass. Let's go have a look.
No, I haven't found any signal grass, but it's not a bad suggestion. We will try and find some signal grass. Byron, of course, will now be killing himself laughing. He'll find himself very, very amusing. Let's have a look at this flaky thorn tree. Signal grass. The worst part of it is that it makes one giggle slightly, and then he gets very encouraged by it. So hopefully they won't be telling him that I'm having a small chuckle at his very poor joke. So here's the flaky thorn, and when I first sort of became interested in insects and what they were doing, not that I'm any sort of expert, this was the tree that I investigated, and I did a little project on the flaky thorn, and my project was to to find out how many species or what species of insects I could find on a flaky thorn tree. And I found weevils, and I found slender ants in the thorns, and I found various other species of ants that were knocking about here. 10-spot leaf beetles, I remember them. But none of these things have I found again, sort of in the subsequent years. So why don't we try and find a slender ant? Now, the slender ants live inside the thorns. They eat the spongy material out of the thorns, and then they go off and, get on with their lives. But you've got to find yourself a very swollen thorn. And this particular flaky thorn, which has been mangled so by elephants, doesn't seem to have any particularly swollen thorns, so that's going to be a fail. This, however, is not going to be a fail. There, Viam, behold, the tropical tent web spider. This is a particularly good example of it. In fact, there's only one. Now, I don't know how much you can see on your screens there, but the complicated lattice work of that horizontal hanging nest is quite astounding. So what we have here is basically a trapeze net. You know, if you've ever been to the circus, perhaps you've seen those nets that they string up underneath, and that's how this thing is designed. But let's just try and give you an estimate of the number of strands that there are per square inch. I'm going to say in a square inch there are probably, say, 50 by 50, or say 100 strands per square inch in this incredibly complicated net. And so what it is, it's very distinct from an orb web, of course, because an orb web would be strung vertically like that through this gap. This is strung horizontally. And then up above here, where my hand is, you've got these knockdown threads. So an insect will fly along here, bzzz, hit a knockdown thread, which are not sticky. Well, they're a little bit sticky, but not very. And then fall down and be caught in the trapeze net, at which point the tropical tent web spider will scuttle along there, sink her fangs into her victim, and suck her dry. And then she will leave the shell just underneath there of chitin. Isn't that fantastic? Now, Bobby, quite unrelated to the spider, you say, have animals ever got into the tent? It's an interesting one, Bobby. We have had one experience where an animal came very fast towards the tent. It was a buffalo bull, and what happened was the tailor came herring down here. She was being chased by the buffalo bull, and while she was running in roughly this manner, she was saying words that are unrepeatable on television. And as she got here, she turned like that, and the buffalo stopped where you are standing now, and then turned around and ran. The scorpion that stinged me on my elbow. It was very sore. Byron, I think, has found some signal, not the grass. I will try and find the grass while he tells you what he's doing.
I've always had signal, James. I never lost it. It sounds like James is having some fun in the tent there and telling us stories of... I'm just trying to think now. I've never been stung by a scorpion. Not yet, touch wood. Not yet, but you've got to be careful. There are a lot of scorpions around. And it doesn't matter where I am in the bush. Whenever I wake up and I put my shoes on, I always shake my shoes out. It's tip of the day, Byron's tip of the day. There we go. When you are in the bush and when you put your shoes back on in the morning after sleeping, I think I spot an elephant. So when you do wake up, don't forget, just check your shoes and also maybe just shake your clothes out, because sometimes scorpions move around at night and they settle underneath or settle in the shoe. Just shake it out and double check. That's the bush tip of the day, or Byron's tip of the day. There we go. I'm hoping they don't move off. It looks like a herd. I'm just going to stop over here and see which way they move. Hopefully they settle down and come a bit closer to us. See how that elephant's lifting its trunk, trying to smell us. Might get a bit of interaction between these two, actually. Looks like two young males. And the one at the back was definitely a male. Yeah, I think these are two young males potentially testing one another. I'm going to move forward a little bit. Let's see, but there were youngsters here too, so there's possibly a whole herd. But you do get these young males around the herds too. It's amazing how thick the bush is at the moment. These animals can all disappear. Now that I'm looking, I think this one, sure, difficult to tell from this angle, to be honest. It's also a young male. Oh, it's a whole bird. You asked, what does a wet elephant smell like? Funnily enough, I don't know what's the best way to describe it. It's not a very pungent smell. It's not like a wet lion or a wet wild dog or anything. That you often get that pungent smell from them. I mean, yeah, there's not. I haven't been that close to a wet elephant to really smell them. I mean, the elephant, you can pick up on their scent. This one might scratch against the tree. Just hold on a second. I just want to listen. I thought I heard something. I don't know what it is. It's just more elephant. There's a lot of elephant moving through the bush. Off to our left. I can't see them. It's completely thick. So there are a lot around. Simpkins is also wondering what the elephants smell like. I'm not sure. It's hard to explain. There's a pungent smell that they give off. Obviously, the males when they are in must, or you do get a lot of that musty smell from elephant at times. Wow, look at this young male. Hang on. How's that? Sorry, the roof makes it a bit tricky for us. Always got to watch out for that little bar that's in the way. But we do need the roof this morning. And breaking the branches. So I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. You know who is good at describing the smell of animals is James. He's got a better grasp at describing the smell. I mean, you do get like occasionally an earthy, that wet earth smell. Sometimes from a wet elephant. I think it's often when they throw sand up on their bodies too. They generally do have a lot of sand on their backs. So after rain, or a wet elephant might smell like that. But I haven't been close enough to really get the smell of a wet elephant. But it's not nearly as pungent as the big cats or wild dog or hyena for that matter. I can hear the button quails calling in the distance. Need to see if we can find one, that would be great. But I don't think it's going to be. Oh. A consulting detective, you want to know if elephants ever damage bird nests? Well, ground nesting birds have to be careful, but what is fascinating is that a lot of these ground nesting birds, when the elephants do approach and get closer, or do look like they are getting closer to the nests, they mob them. These birds will fly down, swoop and mob the elephant, and the elephant do move off or change direction so they don't damage the nest. Look, I'm sure that they may damage some smaller nests that are hidden in the trees, but generally I think they avoid the nests. The birds do make a lot of noise if anything goes close to the nest. And these larger animals, believe it or not, I've seen many times, the best example is are the little lapwings, the ground nesting lapwings, the crowned lapwings, or blacksmith lapwings. And I've seen many times how elephant walk towards them, not knowing that the nest is on the ground, and these lapwings fly down and dive bomb these elephant and chase them away. Or they stand their ground and they look up at these massive beasts, elephant and buffalo, and they chirp and squawk and make a massive noise to prevent these animals from tramping on the nest. Isaiah, I don't think a single lion could take down an adult elephant. It's highly unlikely. I'm not going to say that it's a definite no, because strange things happen in the bush. So you never know. You never know, but it's highly unlikely, and I've only ever heard of large prides taking down elephant and hunting elephant, and not even the big adult elephants, generally the younger or smaller elephant. Those are the types of elephant that would go for the big elephant or a big bull. A pride of lions would not take down elephant. But speaking of lions, Tristan, the lion man, well, since I've been here, has become the lion man because he keeps finding lions. Let's go and have a look.
Well, I don't know if we're the lion man, Byron, but yes, we have been quite lucky the last 2 mornings, and I suppose we didn't actually have to go very far at all. We found them in exactly the same place that they were yesterday. They've not gone very far, except this time it's just Nena and his one female from the Styx Pride, so the rest of the Styx Pride and the other 2 males are nowhere to be seen. They are not here in any shape or form that we can see, so it's just the 2 of them, and it's quite a beautiful sighting. They curled up because of this rainy, horrible weather, and he's been grooming her, which is quite strange. You don't often see male lions grooming the females. It's generally not something that happens, but he's been grooming her, and I think he's trying to woo her with a sort of grooming pattern around her ears and her face. He's also grooming himself with the soft rain that's falling. I think at the end of the day is not very comfortable for a cat, so I wouldn't be surprised that they're actually going to get up and move fairly shortly. If the rain continues to fall and gets a little bit harder, you'll find that the lions will try and find some sort of thicket that they can just go and get inside, that they don't have to deal with this rain. Now, you can see the boy over his head is busy grooming, which is quite something. You see, she's also waking up a little bit now. Now, it's interesting because apparently this morning These two have been fast asleep the whole morning. They have not moved. And as we got here, he put up his head, and now she's slowly starting to wake up. And isn't that quite a sweet picture with the two of them together? Hopefully he starts to groom her again. It was quite nice to see it as sort of a more tender side of these big male lions. And he really is such a beautiful male. He's definitely my favorite out of the four. I know the others have all got interesting sort of attributes to them, and you know, Fulmo's got all these scars and he looks very, very sort of big, and he's scarred up and it makes him quite sort of gnarly, but this definitely is my favorite. Now while we watch these two and see if they are going to maybe mate for us, let's go across to Byron, who's still playing around with his elephants.
Now we've just found a big bull elephant, a beautiful big bull. He was walking straight down towards us, but I've stopped a distance away just to give him some space and let him make the choice of where he would like to go. Fortunately, he decided to go off into the bush. But here's a beautiful big bull. Hang on, let's just see. I'm going to see if I can get another view of him for you. Just watching him carefully, just to make sure that he's not too, what's the word, temperamental? Yeah, there we go, how's that? Sorry Dave, this bar is providing a bit of a hassle this morning. Now I think this male is following the herd of elephant that we saw earlier, because there were a number of elephants spread out through there with some youngsters, and there were females hiding in the bush. But look at him, oh, he is really magnificent, quite a big male. I'm going to try to roll back a little bit here. Try to stick with them. I love that walk that these big males often get when they're walking downhill, especially. It's like a strut almost, when they bob their heads and they walk quite quickly. It's great to see. That's how he was walking towards us earlier, but then he stopped and just decided to turn off. He doesn't seem too fazed by us, which is great. I think he's just interested in following those females. Let's see where he goes. It's amazing how these big animals can just disappear. Look at that. See if he comes out. Give me a second. Let me just reverse a little bit more. I'll try and get another view of him. Let's see. It's a bit tricky from where we are now. I'll tell you what. Why don't we? Hang on. We might have a little gap through here. There we go. But he seems to be moving off a little bit from us. He's got beautiful tusks. Lovely set of tusks. Well, that's a nice view. And have a look how he uses those tusks. That was a great example. You see how he's pulling that acacia tree, those branches, over his tusk, and then he'll use the tusk to break the branches and feed on them. Oh, that's a lovely view of him. Well, I'm glad we got to see this big bull. Let's head back to James in the tent, see what he's up to, and if he's found more grass species for you.
Well, I have found one or two more grass species, but we have gone with Parotus patens. Here we go. Liam found this one. I had another one, and he said, have you got the lollipop grass? I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, this one. And I said, yes, I have. He said, yours is not good. He took it out of my hand and threw it away. Then he bent over and he found one of these Parotus patenses with something on it that's very frightening. Now there's a tick there, right? There's the tick. But if you look very carefully, and this is called a brown tick, I've just discovered, easily remembered because it is Wiem?
Brown?
Correct, it's brown. Well done. The tick seems to be being parasitized by something else, and if you look underneath there, you can see there is another invertebrate that is, I don't know what it's doing. I don't know if it is maybe a junior tick. I don't think so. But who knows what that is. So let's try and get slightly closer. If you do lose focus for a second, don't panic. Don't run away from your room in abject objection. We're just going to do that quickly and then move it slightly underneath. And now focus in further. There we are. We've got some movement there. Now what is that thing? How many leggies does it have? It may not be associated with the tick at all. It might just be associated with the bull. And there's another one. As Viam's just pointed out. Look at that thing coming out. That looks like a little junior tick. It is. It's got 8 legs, so it's definitely an arachnid. Oh, this is fantastic. 3 species all living together on this grass. What they're all doing, I don't know. That might be one of those pepper ticks, which I suspect is a baby brown tick. Maybe not. No, it's too fat. Maybe it's been, I hope it's been parasitizing the tick. I hope it's been devouring things off of the nasty brown tick, which is waiting for some hapless mammal to walk past so that it can jump onto it and suck its blood and possibly give it tick bite fever. This is the tick, everyone, the brown tick here that will give you tick bite fever. Now, obviously, it's almost impossible to tell how big it is from looking at it through a microscope. That's why we look at it through a microscope, really. And it is about 2.5 millimeters long or so. There's no imperial measure that small, so you'll have to work that out for yourself. Well, it's 1/10 of an inch or so. And the others, well, you can work out their sizes. The bigger one on the right-hand side that we cannot identify, it almost looks like a small termite. Well, that one is probably about 1 millimeter long. As for the tiny little thing, well, that's about 1/10 the length of the main tick. So it's about, it can't be that small. I mean, it is. It's about 0.25 of a millimeter. That's 1/4 of a millimeter in length. Now, how many legs has that thing got? That's an insect. That's not a tick. That's got 6 legs. David, you say so a tick can get a tick? Well, it would certainly seem it can. Let me just try and focus in a bit more on that. Yeah, it looks like a tick can get a tick. I bet a tick can get a parasite. It might not necessarily be a tick, but it's certainly probably parasitic. That is just so cool. So I hope we've recorded that and we'll include it in our magnificent Safari Life story about grass. Let's head back across to Byron, who is still with his very large elephant bull.
We have got a huge amount of elephant around at the moment, James. They're spread out all around us. Every now and then we get a wonderful view of 1 or 2 of them coming down into the road and walking towards us. So let's just sit here a little bit and wait. trying to see if there's another one or two coming up ahead of us. Murphy's Law, as soon as you join us, then they go and hide behind the bushes. But there are elephant everywhere at the moment, all around us. I can just hear branches breaking and them feeding. Let me move forward a little bit. Hello. Skip, good morning to you, Skip, or good evening if you're all the way in Texas. You wanted to know, when do elephant make the loud trumpeting sound? So, Skip, they'll do it for a number of reasons. One is, or the main reason, is if they feel threatened. So if there's possibly a predator around, like if they find a pride of lions sleeping somewhere, the elephants don't like having predators around, or any animals for that matter. So they'll trumpet, they'll make a noise, and they will chase them. And we actually just had that a few minutes ago. One of the younger elephant, as we came around the corner, it was in the road and got a bit of a fright, trumpeted and ran towards us a bit and just veered off. The younger elephant tend to do that a lot more than the older elephant. But it is a case of when they feel threatened, if there's potential danger around, they will trumpet and make a noise. I'm just going to try move slightly, so I just get this pole out the way there. So Skip, that is one reason, and then also when the youngsters are trying to get food from their mothers, so when they're trying to suckle from the female elephant, when they are being weaned, so that means when the females are trying to stop them from suckling, those youngsters get very, very upset and they make a lot of noise, almost like throwing a tantrum. And these young elephant trumpet and make a huge sound, huge noise, and then and that's then another time that these elephants will trumpet and make a noise. Those are the two main reasons that I've seen. But yeah, it can be occasionally if they're fighting with one another, they'll make a noise then too. So yeah, I think let us carry on. It looks like these elephants have all moved off, and again the bush is very thick at the moment, so they tend to disappear behind trees and branches very, very easily. But let's continue. James has been doing a lot of grasses. I'm trying to look if I can find my favorite grass, or one of my favorite grasses. I saw one earlier. I'm going to see if I can find it to show you. It's amazing. It's amazing that there are so many species of grasses, and they've all got a different function in nature. They've all got a different niche. So you have pioneer species, the species of grasses which grow in disturbed areas to try and restore areas. And a disturbed area would be, for example, an area that's been overgrazed, perhaps by, let's say, buffalo. Then that area needs to be restored. You'll have pioneer species, which are species of grasses that are able to grow very easily in areas that have been basically dug up and trodden on by animals. So those are pioneer species. And then you've got other species of grasses which will grow later in those areas once they've been re-established and the soils have been held together quite nicely. So it's very, very interesting, and I know James has been doing a lot of work on the grasses and talking about them. Just trying to see if I can find that one that I like so much, but not yet. Justin, you asked, and I think I heard this correctly. Justin, you wanted to know what grass out here has the largest blade. Blade of grass was that correct? Yeah. So oh dear, I'm trying to think now. The blade of grass, the grass has got the largest blade. Just have a look here, everyone. Sorry, just while we're driving, just have a look at this. Look how much, not damage, but activity there was just in front of me from all those elephants. They all moved through here. A few broken branches that those elephants fed on some of the bark. And then look at all the footprints and that in the sand. They've dug up some of the sand and the grass just in front of us. So a lot of elephant activity, and it's all those elephant moved through here, definitely. Now, Justin, getting back to your question, largest blade of grass. Some of the, I'm trying to think now. In terms of the longest stems and that, Justin, now I'm just trying to think and work it out, but in terms of the longest stems, the thatching grass, which I'm sure you've seen around too, those are those long stemmed grasses that they use for thatching for the roofs. Now, those are probably the longest stemmed grasses we get in the area, but in terms of the longest blade, I mean, some of the panicum grasses have got long blades, or guinea grass. I'm just trying to think what else. To be honest, I can't think off the top of my head which one has got the longest blade. I've never actually stopped to have a look at the blades, but there are many different species. But definitely in terms of the height, the thatching grass, there's yellow thatching grass is quite a common one, and they get very, very tall, very long, and people do pick those and gather that grass to build the roofs. Now I'm going to continue my search for various species of wildlife, and while I do that, let's head back to Tristan, who's still with those lions.